But yeah, welcome to today's session on world language. And I put like fall 25 because this is actually, I think, the third session that we've had. So if you want to see the previous sessions, they're on our website. But yeah, super excited to talk about the world language use cases with you all today for Flint. So for those of you who are new here, I usually start off with some ice-breaking news, essentially news in the AI world that might be relevant to you all, just to kind of like warm up and get everyone thinking about where AI kind of lives and exists in this educational space. And then I will, for today at least, talk about features that work really well for world language that you might want to be wary of as you're building out any activities or using the chats in Flint. And then I'll show you some examples of chats and activities, mostly on the side, on the student-facing side. And then finally, we'll have some time for people to share their ideas, share some feedback. I've kind of cherry-picked a couple of teachers to come and share their experiences and their insights. So yeah, super excited for them to share with you all. And some housekeeping items. The recording will be available later. Let me actually double check that the note taker joined. Oh, okay, yeah, it is there. Great. And then, yeah, questions are welcome at any time. Feel free to throw them in the chat or just unmute and ask me. But yeah, definitely want to make this session, as much for you all as it is for our side, receiving feedback and all that. Yeah, and with that, I'll move on to the icebreaking news section. I don't know if you all have heard of Alpha School, but it was a concept that came up, I think, mostly over the past year, maybe the past 2 years. And yeah, the school's whole concept was students are learning with AI for like 2 hours a day, and then afterwards they're just doing a lot of practice. And yeah, and I think like a lot of people were really excited about this. They thought this was like great opportunity for personalizing learning so that students are like spending less time with like very strict and regimented instruction and more so, actually pursuing what they want in their education. But Wired just came out with this article that kind of put a flashlight to everything, and at least in one of their schools specifically, families were not very happy. Yeah, let me move on to this next slide. I know a lot of people that we follow, at least, were kind of buzzing about this on LinkedIn. Yeah, so some people were saying like, hey, I think this model works fine for kids who need less support, but kids who need more support, whether it's like life-wise or psychologically or with learning specifically, it doesn't really work because it's really like kind of, I guess, like best case scenario where the student can, not worry about a lot of the other things of their life, not really need that like support, that like, I guess, emotional, almost social emotional support from teachers. Yeah, and then someone also saying like, there's an inefficiency in schools, of course, when it comes to engagement across all students, but there's still a very important role that teachers need to play in how to interact with students and like develop those relationships. Yeah, so I think like all that to say, I think it was a really interesting article. They kind of like highlighted how, it shows a lot of promise, and like I think it is kind of early to write off this model as like not working, but the problems of like students were, getting really stressed because they had to meet certain metrics, and like that's like kind of all their learning became. It was whether or not they could meet those metrics in certain amounts of time, and then students became really stressed. And I think the final result was that like almost half of the families from the original batch withdrew their students from the Brownsville campus. So yeah, like this 2-hour learning model could be interesting, I think. It's not to say that like that sort of like balance of less direct instruction and more personalized instruction isn't going to work, but we do need to be mindful about how we integrate AI and how we integrate that sort of independent learning so that it still supports students where they need that support. And yes, hopefully that was like somewhat coherent, but definitely recommend checking out this article afterwards. Any thoughts on it? I don't know if anyone else has read about the Alpha School stuff. No worries if not. We can dive into the Flint side of things here, and then of course if there's time to discuss this later, we can do that as well. But yeah, so we'll start off with features that work really well for world language use cases in Flint. Yeah, for those of you all new to Flint, unlike typical LLMs, Flint does a bunch of different things. First of which is like it treats teachers and students pretty differently. And I can show you an example of that. So in this chat, I was a teacher and I just asked it like, hey, can you write a paragraph in Mandarin about the Cultural Revolution? And yeah, it just went ahead and did that for me. It wrote it in both Mandarin and also provided the translation, which was really cool. And then of course it's asking me like in a very helpful manner, like, is there anything you'd like me to expand on or adjust? So, you know, as a teacher's assistant, Flint is very readily helpful. But then I tried this again in a student account, same prompt, and you know, it says, hey, I'd be happy to help you learn about it, but I can't write the paragraph since that could be something you could directly copy into your work. So it kind of like more so guides students on structure, vocabulary support, reviewing, and explaining any concepts that they might need to know. So yeah, you can kind of rest assured that if you allow your students to just like use Flint freely, it won't really be doing the work for them. And other than that, you'll see this a bit later, but with Flint, you don't have to like know how to write prompts as much. You kind of just have to know how to ask good questions and give good feedback, which I'm sure as teachers you all have had much practice doing, because Flint will actually automatically write any prompts for you for the activities that you're building. So yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and then Flint also learns based off of uploaded content. So you can upload information into it, and actually it will also draw stuff from the web, and it will actually cite that in the activities as students go through it. So you can cater the content that your activity covers and kind of like narrow down from its like large wealth of training data to make sure that it's explaining something in the way that you want and guiding students in the way. Yeah, and then the rest of these are kind of self-explanatory, I think. Flint can speak over 200 different dialects. You can allow students to speak to Flint as well. It can process and generate images, which is like one activity example I'll show in a bit. And then you can also have students get writing feedback, and you can also adjust the speaking speed, length, and also the duration of the activity. Yeah, and then, or I guess actually speaking speed should be, or speaking length should be on this page, but essentially now you can adjust how concise or how thorough Sparky's responses are, because I know we were getting a lot of feedback that sometimes it's way too wordy, especially for the students who are just beginning. So yeah, that might be an interesting feature to check out. I think we launched that like last week, but also within the last couple weeks or couple months for some of these. We now use a better base language model, Claude 4.5 Sonnet, if that means anything to you all. We also have these new needs attention highlights. So as your students are interacting with the activity, if they're like either not engaging or they're struggling or they're confused, Flint will highlight that for you. So in your overview page, I'll show you an example of where to find this later. But yeah, Flint will highlight that for you, give you a summary of how everything is going, and then that gives you the opportunity to intervene with that student and kind of help them out where they're needed or where they're needing help. Yeah, and now we have Google and OneDrive integration. So if you have any files that you need to upload, you can put that directly from those accounts. And then there's also the group learning goals and background, which I'll show an example of later. But you can essentially give extra context to your whole group, so you don't have to keep prompting that in the activities. For example, if sorry.
Oh, you got muted.
Yeah, thanks, Mariah. If you're always telling Flint, like, hey, my students are at this specific ECFA level or CEFR level, or if you want to give Flint the context of like, hey, this is like a class for, you know, French as a second language or as an additional language speakers, that would be good information to put into the group learning goals and background. Yeah, and then Sparky also has memory now, which essentially is you can tell Sparky to remember something about you in one of your chats and it will do that. So if you tell it like, hey, I'm a Spanish teacher in Mexico, and I teach students who are mostly English speaking, but also speak a bunch of different languages. That would be good context for Sparky so that every time you come back to a conversation with it, it will remember. So make sure you just put like remember and then whatever it is that you want it to remember about you. Yeah, and then finally, builder chats are now saved. So if you're building an activity, you can always go back in and see what you put in the prompt, which I know has been a long time coming. Yeah, any questions about these items? I'll also scan through the chat really quickly right now.
What do you put the information you want them to remember about you?
Yeah, let me actually just demonstrate that for you all right now. So when you're in Flint, I would just go ahead and go to any chat message, or you can just start typing down here. But anything from like, yeah, anything about your profile, your preferences, you can just tell Sparky. So I'll just say, Sparky, can you remember that I'm a Spanish teacher in Kenya who teaches grade 9 and 10? And then what you'll see is Sparky will say, let me memorize this. And then, yeah, she's saying, I'll update your profile to reflect that you're a Spanish teacher in Kenya teaching grades 9 and 10. And it gives me the confirmation that Sparky was able to do that. So, yeah. Also, if you notice that the messages on my dashboard are a bit concise, that's because I've actually told Sparky to be concise. So if you're ever wanting to edit what it is that Sparky knows about you, you can just ask, what do you remember about me? And then Sparky will kind of spit those memories back out, and then you can then like tell it to edit anything or add anything from there. Yeah. Any other questions about those features?
Lulu, I have a question about what I can upload for Sparky to know, and I assume sort of a PDF version of a Borges short story would not work.
Oh, I think it depends on the PDF. So with uploads, it's best if the text is like recognizable by machines. So essentially, if you open the PDF and you can highlight the text and it like recognizes each of the letters really well, then that should work. And then I think like the other end of the other thing to consider is the amount of information, like essentially the file size. You can typically upload about 50 pages single spaced in each upload. Yeah, and then images might count for like a little bit more, so it's like about 50. But yeah, if you want to like upload the whole story, you could also like break the PDF into multiple pieces. It's just like at one time, Sparky can only process like 50 pages without losing a lot of the specifics in the upload. So that's why we've set that limit. But hopefully it's something that can increase soon as
well. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lulu?
Yes, Elizabeth?
Hi, sorry. Let me just turn my camera on here. Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for doing this. I think that I have no idea if this is a big question for everybody on this call or not, but I think that for language teachers, one of the major things that we're all looking for is to be able to have students have conversations with the AI without having the AI show words, right? So like having students practice spontaneous speaking and receiving feedback, or a place where the teacher, like where I can listen to recorded conversations. I have played around with Flint with varying sort of success on this. I am happy to do the grading. I'm looking at what Michael just wrote. Yes, automatic grading would be wonderful. I'm happy to do the grading, but I would like to see a concrete example of you having a conversation with this where the AI speaks at the right level and students can, like, this can be the spoken part of their exam. Can you show us that?
Yeah. Great segue. I'll jump back into these slides and go to
Thank
the
you.
chats and activities section. Yeah, I guess I'll give a really quick overview first, just to level set with everyone. But we have activities in Flint, which are kind of like these chat bots that you can design that interact with your students in a certain way. And then chats are more for yourself. You, of course, can share them with other people, but typically people are just using chats as ways to interact with the AI on their own. Yeah, there's some like basic overviews here, but activities can be made by you all as teachers. Activities can also be made by students if you want to encourage your students to do that. But yeah, for teacher-made activities, we're typically seeing like, hey, these are tasks that require more specific guidance. So you're like, for your example, like prompting it like, hey, don't show your own text, like make sure you're at like a specific speaking level with students. Yeah, so you can configure all of that in activities that you make. And then chats, we usually recommend for like, specific queries that maybe don't require as much background. So like if you have like an offhanded request for AI or have any like specific questions, that is a great place for that. And then student-made activities, we've actually seen students kind of make activities for their own workflows, but also to practice specific skills that they find gaps in. So that's also an interesting route that you could explore. But yeah, for activities specifically, yeah, I had this example prepped, but if this doesn't answer your question, Elizabeth, I can also do another example on the fly. But so I want to show a workflow in Flint where you can kind of interact with the chat and use it as a brainstorming partner, regardless of whether or not you're going to use an activity in Flint, and then how you can bring that into an activity. Of course, you can always just like immediately start this conversation from an activity if you know that you for sure want it to exist in Flint. But yeah, I'm just gonna show this as an example. But I started off in a chat, and then I asked it to generate an image for a picture prompts activity. And I said I want it to be a busy city scene for students to practice colors, objects, actions, etc. And so here it was able to make an image for me, and then even listed some of the things for students to identify. And then I said, okay, I'm giving it more context. This is always key. But I'm asking like, oh, can you make a version for German CEFR level A1 and one for level B2? And then here it made these different guidelines for like a much more simplified one where this would fit the A1 level, and then one for the B2 level. And of course, this is where I would like use your like knowledge as a teacher to see like, hey, is this like a true A1 or a true B2, or at least like, does it fit your students A1 versus your students B2? Yeah, and then I said, okay, can you make this B2 one into a Flint activity? So essentially here, like you can do all this brainstorming with Flint, kind of like go through this whole chat. And then if you ask it to make it into a Flint activity, you can have it write up the settings document for you. And so here it will like generate all of the specific prompts that you would need. So like Sparky's greeting message, activity settings, Sparky's role and instructions, and then it's even like guiding me on what materials to attach. Yeah, so that's like kind of one workflow. Of course, you could do this directly in the activity builder chat as well, which I'll show you now. So I used this like help me with something else prompt to do that chat that I just showed you all, but I can now create an activity from the output that it shared there. So I'm just going to click create a custom activity because I don't think I need to start with any of the specific activity type guidance. But here I'm going to attach the files. So actually the image that it generated is already in my Flint files and saved. So I'll add that, and then I'll also, I basically downloaded the document from earlier, and I can paste that in here. And then along with those two, I'm going to tell it like only allow students to speak. And for here, if you wanted it not to display any of the text also, then you can also say like you can only speak as well. So if you tell it like you want the students to be speaking only and you want Sparky to be speaking only, that's when you'll have like the sort of interaction where it'll just be like listen button, listen button, listen button. So the students will be able to see it. Once it makes the changes to the settings, I can show you what the preview looks like. Yeah, but this is the like activity builder in Flint. So this is what I mean by earlier when I was saying how like these chats are now saved. So you can see the prompts that you put in to get somewhere. I know that's been like really helpful for teachers who want to share with their colleagues what they've been doing. But yeah, so it created that for me. I can expand this to see all of the changes that it made. And on this right-hand side here, I can see a preview of the session. So it does not autoplay right now, so that's good. But yeah, it still shows the image. The student can open the image bigger so that they can see the details in it. But then it will also have Sparky speaking to them rather than like typing it out for them. Let's see if it will play. Might be a bit slow today.
Hallo. Willkommen zu dieser Aktivität über das städtische Leben. Today you'll analyze a city scene and practice your German at B2 level.
Yeah, so you can like have it kind of guide students in a specific language, in English and a different language, or mostly in English even. But yeah, I would just like make sure to check that preview to see how it's reacting with students. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Hey, we were having a little discussion in the chat over on the side while you're going over this, but I just want to make sure people understand you can always use Flint to ask it like, hey, here's what I'm trying to achieve. What kind of prompt do you need to make that happen? And so it will suggest to you how you can use it better. And so that's, people tend to think like, well, I've got to come up with everything. It's like, well, no, that's the cool thing about a large language model is it'll help you along the conversation as well. So
Yeah.
I've used it for in other applications as well.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. No, that's definitely a really important thing to call out. I also heard from like another teacher recently, it might have been on last week's session, but he said that now he's like built into his like first prompt always like, what am I missing as just like a final question to Sparky. So of course Sparky will like do everything that he says, but then also say like, oh, you might want to consider these things, like make sure that you're adding this into your activity. So yes, definitely a great thing to mention. Yeah, there's a lot of chatter going on in the chat, so let me see if I can like find some of the questions. Jeanette is asking, can I provide Sparky with a list of vocabulary and it can pronounce them for me and download the audio? Oh, You can provide a list of vocabulary. It can pronounce them, but we don't have audio download right now. So I'm not really sure like what your specific use case is, but you could like have Sparky be like reading vocabulary to students, and students need to like spell it out in the activity or something like that, or translate it or whatnot. But right now, audio download is not something that we have built in.
Lulu, thank you. I have created a set of vocabulary reviews for my students, and they have image, they have text, they have, trying to include all the skills. And then when I was trying to get them to speak and interact with Sparky, the level of the prompt that Sparky was providing for my students was way too high in French, although I had already specified it was A1 true novice, right? So I rewrote what I wanted Sparky to say as a tutor, using a lower level language that is common to my students. But then when I tried to apply the activity with them, the system reverted to what the original prompt was for them.
Interesting.
We changed again the language. So instead of, since I am teaching 5th grade, my students only, and I see them only twice a week. And it's very short classes. So I cannot be speaking in formal language for them. It's easier for them to speak at the level that they are for their age. So using the you in formal and French, it's easier for them to handle certain questions, etc. But the system reverted to the formal version, the VU version. So they cannot use it. I just gave up. I couldn't spend more time trying to fight with the AI.
Yeah, I see. That's definitely frustrating. I would maybe suggest like giving Flint the context that, hey, these are 5th grade students who are learning at A1 true novice level. And it's also like an additional language that they're learning, and they primarily speak English. Then you can even have Sparky like communicate a lot with them in English, but then like have them practice specific vocabulary words in the target language. So yeah, that way like, Sparky's like not fully like just in one language, and then it might be able to like level it more appropriately. But I think also if you put in that context of like, hey, these are like fifth graders, like actual.
No, I did. I put the whole prompt with who they are, what age they are. I even gave a list of the vocabulary that they are using, etc. I don't know, somehow it always reverted to the original version it offered me. So I don't know if there's a way to change that setting.
Interesting. Yeah, I think, let me show you in the build manually, I guess, so that you can like double check that the settings actually transferred over. But yeah, in Flint, we have like this build with Sparky, which most people use actually, because it's a lot easier to prompt with natural language. But in the build manually, you can see the actual settings that Sparky has been writing and edit those. And then in the language part, I would just like double check that, oh wait. Actually, in the behavior part, there we go. I would just double check that it's set the appropriate grade level. And then you can also now maybe adjust the response style to be concise. Like for example, right now this one is thorough, so like I would probably want it to be concise for A1. And then yeah, and then I would also like make sure that maybe English is allowed if you want.
Yeah, I have it like that. Okay, I will try to fiddle with it, and if not, I'll send you a message. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, feel free to. Great. And then let's see. Ooh, there's a lot of questions.
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering what's next for Flint in terms of advancing the world of language education. Like, will you be introducing avatars just to, take it up a notch?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We haven't necessarily specifically been wanting to target avatars, I guess. Overall, our goal as a company is to advance personalized learning. So I think like more interactive activities, allowing students to have more agency, giving Sparky more context and like allowing it to remember more context about the student, not just like what they put into the memory, but also like, hey, maybe like Sparky should know that like, oh, a couple months ago the students did this activity at this level and now they're like they've improved to like this amount or this level, but there's still like these specific gaps. So kind of giving it a more holistic view of the student. Yeah, I would say those are some of the things that we're looking at. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of questions in the chat. I might just try and answer them all at the end, just so we can like get to the teachers' shareouts. But let me finish demonstrating this activity. So yeah, like it created this initial version. You can always try out the session manually. This is what I was doing earlier and showing you all here. But I would also like simulate the session if you want. But first, I'm actually going to ask it to add a grading rubric similar to the AP scale. So that way, when I show you the preview, it will actually have the different grade levels built into Flint. So sometimes if you see like just the gray play arrow, that means that there's not a grading rubric that activity. So you can ask it to add one with like a specific style, whether it's like, you know, AP, IB, or you can ask for A through F or 0 to 100 also. Yeah, so now you can see on this side, the arrow is now like a different color and there's the different grade levels in this drop down. And then I can say like, okay, let's see what like a middle of the road submission looks like. And so here you can see like the messages, and actually these would all be spoken, but for the previews part, it's going to show you in text actually. So that's just easier to skim through. But yeah, there's definitely like a lot of text here, right? So what I would actually do is for this activity, I want it to be like more of a back and forth rather than a one-time go students like try and describe the image. So I'm asking it to do a couple things. I'm asking it to first adjust the speaking level to 0.75 times speed because I think it was going a bit fast. I'm asking it to make the response style more concise. And then I'm also asking it to adjust the initial message to be more concise. So I think this last piece is pretty important actually, because based on the initial message, that might affect the way that Sparky communicates throughout the rest of the activity. So if you're like asking for adjustments throughout the activity, it would also be good to add that for the initial message as well. Yeah. And so it's making all of those changes for me. And now when I simulate it, it should have reflected like a much simpler activity. So yeah, here like the introduction is like way shorter. And then the student can like still provide as much text here as they want. And then Sparky's feedback is like way more directed. Yeah, so yeah, and then I would always, of course, recommend simulating it automatically here, but also trying it out manually to see what it looks like. Like if you were one of your students, I think you understand them best. It would be best for you to try it out as a student and see how it reacts. Cool. Okay. Yeah, let me go back to my presentation really quick. Yeah, okay. So I want to show a really quick example of what it looks like once you have some student sessions. So on this overview page here, for this like oral practice exam, yeah, there's some like activity analytics, and then also some of these sessions that students have had. Ooh, let me actually go back to, maybe I'll find it in a sec, but there's also, sorry, okay, I might have copied the wrong link, but typically this is also where the needs attention feature would highlight where a student is like not engaging or struggling. So you get these analytics and feedback for your whole class. If you click into a specific student's session, you'll also get the feedback from them, and then you can see like the back and forth that they had with the AI. And then if everything is spoken, then the text will still appear for you. It'll actually auto transcribe that for you at the end. But as the student is going through it, it'll just look like a listen button, listen button, listen button, so that the students aren't seeing the text. But yeah, when it transcribes it, you'll see that it's like grayed out, so you can tell that that is something that the student spoke rather than typed. Yeah, and you can go through like the entire back and forth. If there's any feedback that Sparky has given the student, you can like click on that and see what the evidence for that is. And yeah, so that's how you can see like a single student's feedback and also the feedback for the whole class. And you can keep an eye on the needs attention feature as you're using it live in your class. Okay, and then one more thing that I wanted to point out before we go to the share out section is the library in Flint. I saw in the chat that a lot of people are asking for like specific examples of stuff and whether certain things are possible. Yeah, so, oh yeah, and Agnes is saying that you can also add your own feedback to each student session after it's complete, for sure, for sure. And Ling is asking, can we modify the settings for needs attention? I don't know, actually. I don't know if anyone's tried that. You might be able to like specify what you want Flint to be looking out for in the activity settings, but I still need to test that out. So that's a good question. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so a lot of people were asking in the chat if there's specific examples for things and if certain things are possible. So I think like actually checking out the public library, which is in the bottom left here, might be a good place for inspiration. So this is a library of activities that have been made by the Flint community for the Flint community. So most of these are made by teachers, some of them are made by students, and some of them are made by our team. But yeah, you can definitely search through it with specific keywords, or if you want to generally look at like world language, we do have the option to like filter for that here. And yeah, this might like be a good place to see what other people are doing, grab some immediate inspiration. And if you see anything that might be interesting, you can always duplicate this activity and adjust it for your own needs. Yeah, for example, like, oh, this is an IB exam, individual oral practice, but maybe I need this for Spanish or instead, or for French. I could just like duplicate this activity to my own workspace and then ask it to change the language or the level even. Yeah. Ooh, Andrea is asking, is there a way for students to have their own profiles so they can monitor their progress over the year? So there are profiles in Flint. So if I go to like my name here and my profile, I can see like the groups that I'm in, the activities that I've made, and also the sessions that I've had. So here, like if your grading is consistent over the course of the year, all of the grades will appear on that side as well. So yeah, the students could kind of like get a gist of whether or not their grades are improving, I guess, at least over the course of the year. But we don't have like a super holistic view yet, which I think is definitely something our team wants to work on. So if you have any suggestions or feedback for that, please share.
I have a question. This is Megan. Is there any sort of grading integration into learning management systems that Flint is able to do yet?
Yeah, not yet. Sorry, but that is something that we're actually actively looking into. So hopefully you can see that soon. But it is like kind of complicated because like I think we basically have to work with every single different learning management system. So it might take some time, but we definitely want to build that. I think that's like one of the next priorities for the engineering team. Yeah. Matt is asking, I'm wondering if students can have a single chat throughout the year so they can demonstrate their learning at different parts of the year and then have Flint evaluate the growth. Yeah, that could be interesting. You could even put that in an activity maybe, like checkpoints for the students to then go interact with the activity and see like how that changes over time. I will be mindful that like there is a like length limit to the chat. Like after a certain amount of time, Sparky might not remember things from earlier. So if you create it as an activity, you could have students like have separate chats as their checkpoints. And then that way, like the information is still all in one activity, but the chats that they have at each point can be much longer. Okay, I'm sorry if I missed any questions in the chat here. There's definitely a lot going on, which is really good. So if I missed anything, feel free to call it out. But we do have some limited time, so I'm going to go ahead and like move on to the share out section. So yeah, specifically, I did ask Agnes and Galina, both from the Harker School, both French teachers, to kind of share what they did. They definitely took on like a really big project with Flint this past summer. Yeah, so feel free to take it away, you two.
Hi, I'm Agnès from San Jose for the Harker School. So I've been working with my colleague Galina and Lulu with Flint over the summer. And what we wanted to do is to have Flint become an instructional assistant for our students. And it has been working really well. The biggest example that I have is about test corrections. So now I put the comments on the unit test in the Google Doc, and then the recommendations that the students have to work on for with remediation exercises is going to be copied into a Flint session. And then it will give remediation exercises on the specific grammar points that I indicated in my comments. And so students will work on that, and it has been really powerful, and students are progressing a lot.
Nice. That's really cool. Could you walk through a bit more like how you set that up specifically? Or if you want to share your screen, that could also work.
No, I think, yeah, students take a test on paper, then I circle their mistakes, then I write my comments into a Google Doc that is shared with the student. And in the Google Doc, there are 3 columns with the name of the test, then the kudos that I give to the student, and then the areas of improvement. And my comment from the area of improvement, I ask the students to copy it into a Flint session that is called test corrections. And so they are going to name the session with the name of the test, and then they are going to have, and Sparky is going to read my comments and give them remediation exercises to work on the grammar points that they need to improve.
Oh, that's really cool. So like basically it's like a recurring tutor that they can go back to, but with like the specificity from your comments each time.
Yes. So in the Google Doc, they will have now all the comments for each unit test. And before, those tests are kept at school, so they can see them during office hours or when they're at school, but they cannot take them home. And so I wanted them to see their progress and see from unit test to unit test what they need to work on. And then in Flint, they only have one session where they will have unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, and so they will see what they have been working on, and if they still have to fix the same mistakes about the conjugation of the passé composé, for example, says, okay, I really need to fix that. And of course, with the need attention feature of Flint, I can ask them to come to office hours and work with me on top of that activity.
Nice. Yeah. I guess like I'm curious about at least like how have the students reacted to this?
Very positively, actually, and they say that it helped them a lot. And so a very cute thing is that one of my students named Sparky Petit Prof, little teacher. So now we named Sparky Petit Prof. And so I also put on my Schoology page, a learning a school platform, a link to Petit Prof Sparky, and then they have a session where they can review any point of grammar whenever they want, when I'm not available. So if they want to cram extra practice before a quiz or a test, or prepare a presentation, or do whatever they need to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Agnes. Yeah, I don't know if Galina had anything to add to that or.
Sure.
Oh.
I don't know what's going on with my camera. Sorry, I guess it was not awake yet. I also created this activity. I have more advanced level classes. It goes a little bit depending on mistakes they do. Sometimes even advanced students make kind of silly mistakes. So they were not happy when Flint asked them to do progressive exercises on this stuff. But again, overall, it was very helpful. Also experimented with creating practice exercises for AP French exams, specifically for specific tasks. So it's a work in progress. You still kind of have to fine tune it, but the students do find it useful just to be reassured that they can do as much practice as needed for specific tasks. Some of them were experimented with a new format, and it's a funny story, and let's know that. So in my beginner students, we worked in preposition of location, and we worked in description. Flint also helped them to fine point their writing with particular number of prepositions and adjectives. And after that, I asked Sparky to create a picture based on their description. And it was actually a beautiful picture, but interesting story. One student keep misspelling one word. So you have the word coussin with double S, which means pillow for the sofa. She spells it with one S, which means cousin. So in her picture, instead of two pillow on the sofa, it was two big cousins. But it's a good example of how visual it becomes. So students really enjoy this activity.
That's super funny. And I'm sure now they will never forget the difference between the two. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Does anyone have any questions for Agnes and Galina?
Agnes, I'm really interested in, I also teach French, and I'm really interested in your example, but I'm having trouble understanding the sort of nuts and bolts of how you gave the test results to Flint so that it could work individually with students based on their individual errors and areas where they need to improve.
Yeah, I'm not exactly prepared to share my screen, but maybe I could do something that I could share with Lulu, and then she could pass it to you, put it on a forum. Or, but the idea is that, for example, if in the areas of growth column on the Google Doc that is shared with the student, I put, okay, review the passé composé with avoir and être, okay? Then they are going to copy the text that I typed in the Google Doc into the Flint activity that I created that is called examen test corrections. And so the prompt that I gave to Sparky is that give 2 remediation exercises for of increasing difficulty for each grammar point that is mentioned for this test. So for example, okay, so if the student copies this comment about passé composé with avoir and être, it says, okay, so I see that you need to review the passé composé with avoir and être. Let's start with avoir. So let's do is it with the structure or with the, we're going to look about the formation, and then we're going to look at the usage of in the sentence. So according to the level, of course. So it has been very helpful, and I could also specify ask Sparky to that Sparky asks the student which is the theme of your unit, so that it can use the vocabulary of that unit.
Okay, thanks. Is Sparky being prompted by you or by the student, or are there
No,
different steps?
Sparky has been prompted by me.
Okay.
Yeah.
It kind
So
of
I specify to Sparky, okay, offer the students a short review lesson, and do you want the lesson in English or in French? You're going to do 2 remediation exercises, and so the student is going first one, Sparky gives comments and says, let's do something a little more difficult, and to see if you really got it. And then Sparky is giving the second exercise, and then the students need to finish all exercises and submit the sections to the session to get credit for test corrections. Well, I don't give any points, but it's just that I want them to do it. And in class, I would never have time to do all this. And so it's very specific to each student. And so I think it's very powerful.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I actually really like that structure of like you provided Sparky some like basic guidelines, but then the student goes in and puts like their specific needs. I think like, of course, like then it can be more personalized to each student, but also you're kind of along the way teaching students like, hey, you can ask Sparky to help you with very specific things. Yeah, so that's really cool. Okay. Yeah, Mariah's saying instead of traditional test corrections where they correct the test itself, they are correcting by learning and practicing the concepts. Yeah, that sounds right. So, okay. Great. All right. Any other questions for the two of them? Also, sorry if the lighting in my video is weird. The train passes by sometimes, and then the sun goes like through the train cars, and it's kind of flashing. I should just close my window. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it for now. I'll go ahead and do the wrap up, and then I'll afterwards, so people can leave if they need to, but afterwards I can also like go through the chat and answer the additional questions. So yeah, if you do need to leave, feel free to. But yeah, the answers to the rest of the questions will also be in the recording. So we only have 5 more sessions planned for the rest of this semester. The one for next week. Sorry, there's a little bit of echo there. The one for next week is planned for 10 p.m. Eastern. That's because I'll be in Jakarta at a conference, so I figured I can do a session more favorable to the schools in Asia. But of course, everything will be recorded, so if you want to review that session, you can. And then also, if you want to send me any questions that I think I should cover during the session, feel free to, and I can prep for that as well. And then the rest of these sessions, they're actually not specifically on these dates, but like the week of that date. So yeah, once that is like set in stone, of course, we'll like post about it and send you all emails about that. Great. Oh, and then also if you have any sessions that you want to see for next semester, just let me know, and then we can also work that into the schedule. Yeah, and all recordings will be posted at our website, flintk12.com/webinars. But if you're registered for this event and if you came to today's session, you'll get the recording in your email once that's available. So no need to like go proactively check, but you can also see previous recordings here. And here I have some final QR codes for you all. So I'm actually going to work right to left on this, but the Flint community is a great place to ask each other questions, ask for feedback. I think a lot of the questions today would be awesome ones to throw into the community if you still want like other people's perspectives on things. Yeah, definitely want to make that a space like for you all, by you all. So our team is like pretty active in there, make sure we're answering questions and all that, but really it's like a forum space for you all to interact and gather inspiration from others. Yeah, and then our Instagram is one of our newer social media platforms, and we're trying to make it more teacher facing. So whereas like a lot of our other platforms might be more like administrator facing and all that, the Instagram we definitely want to make more fun and more like teaching tip centered. And then finally here, my colleague Jacob, who maybe some of you have met, has started hosting office hours as well. So if there's like a specific activity that like you're struggling with that you want help with, or if there's like, if you just need like an introduction to something, that would be a great place to go. So they're every Tuesday and Wednesday at specific times, and the link for it is here. But yeah, so that is also an option. And yeah, you'll get these slides once the session is over, I think in 2 minutes. So yes, if you need any of the links to, you know, the article from earlier or to any of the, I think some of the examples I showed, or to the library and to these callouts specifically, those will all be in there.